2008, October 2008, Louis C.K. did this conversation with Conan O'Brien, and this was it was the last month of in the fall of 2008, the last month before the election, when it was Obama versus McCain. And right during this period is when the economic stock market banking collapse was taking place, began like a month earlier, and was really cooking there in October. And as astrologers know, at that time, Saturn was closely opposing Uranus in the sky at that point. And many characteristics of Saturn-Uranus were in evidence, that particular archetypal complex were in evidence in the larger world situation and collective situation at that point. By the way, it was especially potent because Pluto was T-squaring it. Pluto was squaring both Saturn and Uranus, but it was a very tight opposition. They became exactly opposite on election day, the first week of November. And some of the typical things that you see with Saturn-Uranus hard aspects are sudden collapses of structures, especially with Pluto involved, like a mass collapse of the economic system, like the last T-square of those was the Great Depression, 1929 to 33. And there's often a very strong tension when Saturn and Uranus are in opposition, a very strong tension between like the old and the new, between the past and the future, between the old and the young, for example, McCain versus Obama, or between the conservative and the progressive, liberal, radical, that's more associated with Uranus Promethean energies. So you had both the economic collapse, the sudden collapse of structures affecting the world, and you had this highly dichotomized conflict between, politically within the campaign, between, it seemed like, a conservative, older, Republican candidate versus a young, liberal African-American whose very being was a revolution in a sense, coming straight out of the 60s civil rights movement, his very being within that presidential campaign. Well, it was in that context that this conversation happened, and we can see, this is a very good example of how in about 4 minutes you can see about 20 different themes of the Saturn-Uranus opposition being played out. And just to give a few headlines from it. First of all, you're seeing the very typical Saturn-Uranus motif of the old and the new, or how it used to be and how it is now. The way the telephone used to be compared with the cell phone now, or the way the airplane ride is in 4 hours, 5 hours from New York to California compared with 30 years, and whole, new people dying and being born on the way and so forth. Those are classic contrasts between Saturn as the old, the past, the slow, the way things were, versus the Uranian principle of the technological, instantaneous innovation, the new, the future. But you also get lots of Saturn-Uranus themes coming through with things like breakdown of technology, like the internet that connection on the plane that stopped happening, or the aviation, the flight that is delayed, or also complaints about technology. Saturn is judgment, complaint against technology not working right, or give it a chance. Like the delay of the cell phone getting its signal up to the satellite in space and then back, or his even getting right down to how he describes the telephone, how it was like the rotary phone and how slow it was, and even like creating sparks, and ringing lonely if nobody's there, like this Saturn image of the lonely, isolated. And of course, it's like the landline where you can't move at all, compared to the mobile phone where you can be anywhere in the world. This highly fluid, technologically instantaneous modus operandi. You have also the theme of old versus young. Like there's often the expression of like a generational conflict or criticism. You saw it under the last Saturn opposite Uranus in the mid-60s, when it was the countercultural young against the old establishment. Don't trust anybody over 30, or hope I die before I get old, as the Who put it in my generation. And that generation gap that started under the Saturn opposite Uranus of the mid-60s, with Pluto involved as well then, again had an expression even in this where he, film clip where he describes this as just this technology, this marvelous, amazing technology is being wasted on the most undeserving generation that is just, non-contributing zeros who are complaining about not, about basically taking for granted the amazing technologically mediated world that we have. So that's another Saturn-Uranus thing, is like he's using his Saturnian sense of time and his experience and his sense of age and perspective, and looking at the young with their lack of perspective, and they're taking for granted the amazing technology. So it's both a Saturnian judgment of the young, Uranus, but it's also another way of looking at it is, the name of this clip is everything's amazing and nobody's happy. Well, the amazing is a theme of Uranus, like the wonder, the excitement, the new technology, and the unhappy judgment, the sense of depression, unhappiness. That's the negative Saturn at work. So even the title of the whole 4-minute clip, as it is on YouTube, is a perfect Saturn-Uranus comparison. So you get a sense for the multiplicity of ways in which one particular archetypal complex, in this case the dynamic interaction of the Saturn principle with this Uranus or Promethean principle of the that's connected to the planet Uranus, how this one archetypal combination can be expressed in a multiplicity of ways that are still always authentically reflective of their essences, and yet are inflected in this plurality of ways that, in a sense, I think show the creativity and even playfulness of the cosmos at work. And as a final coup de grace, that Saturn opposite Uranus was transiting right across Louis C.K.'s sun, like right on the nose, as he was, doing this kind of stand-up comic routine while he's sitting down. And that's very characteristic, that a person who is having a world transit go right across an important part of their chart, in this case his sun, will become more of a kind of vessel of the collective energy, or they can become, especially somebody, a public figure or an artist, is very often becomes a conduit of the archetypal energies of the zeitgeist.